Welcome back to another Mobalytics video, and today we're taking a look at 10 champions who suddenly became OP with the durability patch 12.10. Some of these champions were already pretty strong, and some weren't as great, but this patch their win rates and performance have significantly improved. Lots of champions and items are also being changed next week in patch 12.11. It's another huge patch, arguably even bigger than 12.10, so the meta is bound to shift once more, but most of these picks will still be more than relevant. There are so many strong and overpowered champions in the game right now, but we're going to try and avoid talking about most of them because you're probably bored to death of those already. So here's a list of champions that you might not realise are absolutely busted. Let's get straight into the video and start off with a top lane pick, and it just has to be Singed. Singed has been underrated for quite a while and not many people were playing him, but this patch has definitely encouraged more people to pick him up, and people are now realising just how good this guy can be. The durability changes that got given to every single champion definitely helped Singed out in the early game. Before the patch he was quite vulnerable early game, and if he got camped a few times early game he could really struggle to actually do his job. Now though, with a bit of extra health he just doesn't really die. He wins a lot of extended trades with his poison and he can just fling back anyone who tries to pursue him. And then once he gets into the mid to late game he just presses Ghost, presses his ultimate, runs around flinging whoever he wants and takes a hell of a lot of damage whilst also dealing a lot of damage over time with his poison too. Singed is one of these champions that doesn't really rely on a mythic item. He's all about his upgraded boots, his demonic embrace and his Rylai's crystal scepter. Then you can go for a Rift Maker or you can go for a Hextech rocket belt, but either one is kind of just preference on what you need and what you prefer. Once you have got your core item build though, you deal a lot of damage over time. You just run around in fights, absorbing as much damage as you can, dealing loads of DPS, denying people's mobility with your W and flinging back those carries into your team. Predator's not the most overpowered rune anymore, but it's still incredibly good on Singed. Whether it's running towards your lane opponent flinging him under your tower, whether it's roaming mid lane, whether it's ganking bot lane, whether it's just chasing down backlines in teamfights, this rune makes Singed so much more scary. And it also means you don't need a chem tank to actually run at your enemies, and instead you can trade that off for some more ability power. There are so many low mobility champions in the game at the moment, scaling utility mages and supports, AD carry hyper carries in the bot lane, junglers that are just farming, and instead of all those assassins like before, Singed can just run at them and they simply cannot answer him. The next thing you know, you're flung back into a whole team and you're dead in a matter of seconds. GG, well played, honour the Singed. Next up, we've got a jungler, and it's actually going to be Gwen. She is beasting it this patch in both the jungle and the top lane, but this is where she's really had the most difference to her win rate in that jungle. Gwen will always be one of those champions that's very difficult to balance. She's either absolutely broken or kind of just useless. Right now though, she's definitely having a really good time, and if you get to the late game, that ultimate, that burst, that damage, that movement, that W, she is so hard to beat. Gwen has the ability to absolutely pulverize entire teams if they line up inside her ultimate. And there's really not too much they can do to answer it because of that W making her immune. The early bit of durability has made the world of difference to those champions that need to scale like Gwen, Vayne, Kayle, you name it. But we're not talking about those other two because everybody knows that by now. But the fact of the matter is Gwen really liked these changes. And you're just simply not going to get invaded and killed by assassins all day because this is not happening. Next patch might be a bit different when they buff everything again, but for now Gwen is absolutely busted. Once Gwen's got her core item build and she's got a few levels on her as we move towards the mid to late game, this champion just becomes a bit unstoppable. And you're going to need a hell of a lot of point and click CC in close range to actually be able to kill her. And the only way you're actually going to be able to do this is if she wastes her W first. If Gwen partners up with a team comp with a lot of AoE CC and initiation, she can join the fight and kill everybody. Definitely a champion to be very afraid of this patch. Brand is the next champion on this list, and this guy just came out of nowhere in both the mid and the support roles, and even a little bit in the AD carry position too. If you play Brand in any of these roles and you play him well, it's going to be very unlikely that anyone will ever beat you in the damage meters. The burning damage over time that Brand can do with his passive, his demonic embrace and his Lion Juice Anguish just absolutely melt any type of opponent that tries to kill him. Whether you get up close and personal and pop your ultimate or you sit back and poke and catch from afar, this guy's damage is through the roof at the moment. Brand's weakness has always been assassins, hard engaged, dive comps that he simply cannot deal with, and his only option is to try and kill them before they kill him. This patch though, there's a lot of range in the game. There's a lot more time for him to deal damage during fights, and there's a lot less one-shotting going on, which means that he can simply rack up that damage, but he still also has the burst that he had before. This means that Brand is just great in all situations at the moment, whether it's quick burst fights when you catch someone out with a stun combo or long extended team fights where you're just competing for the highest damage in the game. Wherever you play Brand, he's a brilliant one to go for this patch. Twitch was not exactly a bad champion before this patch, but most like other AD carries, he just struggled with all the damage in the game, and he also had a very vulnerable early game during the lane phase. This patch though, it's much easier to get through lane unharmed, and quite often Twitch can actually come out of lane really far ahead now. The scaling AoE damage that this champion does in the late game is mental. It probably is the highest AoE damage you can do from any AD carry right now. Ones that are relevant anyway. Sorry Aphelios, that wasn't personal, I swear. But anyway, Twitch is seriously a fantastic AD carry to go for at the moment. His damage with Blade of the Ruin King and Kraken Slayer can melt any type of target, and that poison damage plus that expunge can deal a lot of burst too. Twitch does actually have quite a unique playstyle for an AD carry as well due to his Q stealth mechanic. This just adds a whole different dimension to his playstyle. He can use this to surprise people when they're farming in the lane phase. He can use this when he recalls to roam to other lanes and pick up free kills and ganks. And he can also use this in team fights to ambush people and collect a hell of a lot of kills. If you're confident in your AD carry capability, Twitch is the one to play right now. Another great choice for the mid lane or support right now is Zilean. He really is so simple to be effective on. All you gotta do is know how to press QWQ to do your double bomb, and that's pretty much it. The rest of his kit is super straightforward. You can speed yourself and your teammates up with your E, you can slow enemies down with the same ability, and then you've got that insane ultimate to revive your allies from the dead. You are basically a permanent guardian angel for your teammates and yourself, and if that wasn't the definition of scaling utility, then I don't know what is. This patch is all about those champions that are consistent from the mid lane from the support, that can really dish out a lot of utility in extended fights and in all situations in all types of games. Zilean is the epitome of this, and he is extremely contested across basically every single rank right now. He definitely gets better the higher you go because people understand all about his macro and how to actually rotate and how to roam with him. But because he's easy to play, he also applies to low elo too. Zilean also makes other champions even more broken, a little bit like Yuumi does, but Yuumi isn't having such a good patch. You speed up a Singed, you speed up a Gwen, you give them a GA, and they become so much better as a champion, especially when you're throwing bombs on them and even adding to their DPS as well. Whether you go for a Shirelius and speed everyone up even further, or go for an Everfrost and add to your lockdown, you become so effective with just one item. And as long as you don't run out of mana or get caught out of position, you're going to do a hell of a lot of good things on this champion. Back to the jungle now, and it's time to talk about Kindred. Historically, a champion that's always been fantastic in the right hands, and there are a lot of Kindred one-tricks already having a lot of success with her before this patch. But now it seems like tons more players are realising how good she is. Kindred is all about jungle macro, counter jungling, invading, securing those camps for her passive, scaling up, getting extra range and damage, and becoming an absolute monster the later the game goes on. Kindred snowballs at an incredible pace. She gets a lot of damage once she's got that mythic item, and she just sets up camp in the enemy jungle, taking everything that belongs to them and making it hers. She also has brilliant objective control. She can take them so quickly, and she can deny enemies from securing them with her ultimate. Once Kindred's got those items and those levels, she becomes so hard to beat. She's got that mobility, the burst, the kite and chase potential, and she becomes so oppressive if she's partnered with the right champions. By the way, those champions are in full swing at the moment. Utility mid laners, utility supports are everywhere, which instantly makes Kindred tons more viable. Another champion in the mid or support role. That's 3 in just this video, and it's going to be Vel'Koz. And his win rate in the mid lane right now is at an all-time high. Vel'Koz has always been a fantastic pick to outrange certain mages, the ones in mid-range that can't really deal with long-range poke. Well, the fact is no one is playing assassins now either, which means Vel'Koz just doesn't really have any bad matchups. His only problem before was hard engage and dive, because everyone else he just outranges. To add to that though, he also scales very surprisingly well too, especially if you go for a Lion Tree Sandwich, which most mid laners are doing right now. Vel'Koz has a lot of strengths in the game at the moment. He's got catch potential, he's got long range AoE damage, he's got burst, he's got consistent damage output in extended fights, he's got poke, he's got so many different ways to do a lot of damage and win a lot of fights. He's always going to have those weaknesses of being really prone to hard engage and close range all-ins though. But you are still going to need to be careful of those bruisers and assassins that are being played now and again. As long as you are aware of your positioning though, you don't get caught out, you can basically stay alive forever, pump out serious damage and carry games on your own. Let's go back up to the top lane now, and it's time to talk about Yone. Yone is definitely not in the god tier right now, but he does have a lot of ways to win games, he does a lot of damage, and he doesn't have as much bad matchups as he did before. Good Yone players are having a lot of success with the Blade of the Ruin King rush setup, then followed by the usual items of Immortal Shield, Infinity Edge, Death Stance, Guardian Angel, you know, all the usual nonsense. Blade of the Ruin King is also getting a buff next patch, so it's only going to get even stronger. Yone is one of those champions that's just a little bit vulnerable pre-6, but when he gets his ultimate, it completely turns around the other way, and now he has really good all-in potential. Yone is by no means a difficult champion. I'm sure most people will agree with that statement. It's fairly straightforward just to mash your face against the keyboard and come out on top, but the fact is you're going to need to know your limits to know how to do this. Limit testing is a huge part of playing champions like Yone, like Yasuo, and it turns out a lot of those fights you thought you'd win, you'd lose, and vice versa. So trial and error is a big part of learning this champion. But when you understand your power spikes, you know when you're stronger, you know when you can win these fights, you can snowball very quickly. And when you do snowball on Yone, there's probably just going to be no answer to you. You charge your Q, you press your E, you ultimate into a team, you follow that with a Q3, you knock up, you kill everybody in sight, and you get back out again with your E2. Once you've got those big core items, Yone just dominates a hell of a lot of games. And especially low elo players just simply don't know how to beat him. If you enjoy Yone, try him top and try him Blade of the Rune King, see how you get on and let us know. Next up, we've got another AD carry. It's not Kog'Maw, it's not Vayne, it's not all those other ones you thought it would be, it's actually going to be Ashe. Ashe's win rate is now sitting at around 52.5%, which is the highest it's been for quite some time. Part of this is there's no way near as much threat to her. Those assassins and those tanky engaging supports are just so rarely played at the moment. And this means Ashe just scales up for free, and then she just pew-pews everybody into oblivion. There's quite a few different build options you can go for on Ashe at the moment. Some people like Gale Force and Shield Bow. I personally would recommend Kraken Slayer followed by Phantom Dancer. These items when combined with the lethal tempo are just so strong at the moment. The burst you can do, especially when you've charged up your Q, is insane. And you really do feel like a bit of a professional all of a sudden once you start kiting with her. Whatever items you do decide to go for though, Ashe is undeniably a brilliant choice to go for this patch. She's got those slows, she's got poke, she's got good scaling, she's got a global ultimate to catch people out, she's got good self-peel. There really is so much that this champion has. But there's just so many periods of the meta where Ashe just doesn't exist. Right now is not one of them, and she's in a really good spot. So if you enjoy playing this champion historically, make sure you give her a go. Finally, we're going to finish off with probably the most obvious choice on this list. We try to stay away from the most obvious and most blatant broken champions, but some of you may not know just how crazy she is, and that's going to have to be Janna. Janna has the highest win rate in the game at the moment, and her jump in win rate this patch was just way too hard to avoid putting it in this video. This game is all about extended fights, it's all about surviving the early game and scaling into utility powerhouses, and guess what? Janna is the definition of this. Janna is good throughout all stages of all games. She works well into all team compositions with all AD carries against most matchups too, and there really is no real weakness to picking her, no matter how high in the champion select you are. Janna's kit basically has everything that you want from that support role at the moment. The only thing missing is just a little bit of damage. She's got her Q to set up fights or disengage, she's got her W to slow people down and line up her Q easier. She's got those low cooldown shields which definitely make the difference in early fights. She's got her ultimate which can disengage, which can push people away, but also heal a whole team at the same time. All of these abilities and her kit in general is so impactful this patch. And in my opinion, she's actually one of the most fun supports to play too, as there's nothing more satisfying than rushing into a team fight to save your teammates' lives. Saving your teammates in those big clutch situations and making the difference in fights is what Janna is all about this patch. And if you enjoy that kind of playstyle, you should definitely consider giving her a go if you haven't already. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of this quick video all about 10 champions that suddenly became so much better in patch 12.10. Give some of these picks a go and let us know how you guys get on. Don't forget, if you want to see more in-depth builds and guides for these champions, then head on over to mobalytics.gg and download our desktop app. This will allow you to import the most popular and the highest win rate builds, the runes, and learn tons more about these champions, matchups, counterplays, combo breakdowns, and tons more. Thank you to everybody who's been watching our content recently, and we'll see you all in the next video. Take care.